Okay. Good morning, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy spring schedule to join us. I'm Carolyn Middleton. I'm Director of College Counseling, and I'm joined by my colleagues Louis Almonte, Joelle Chen, and Mary Dunn. And as you can see, an esteemed panel of parents of graduating seniors. We were just talking a little bit before we got online about that idea of graduating seniors, because folks were in your position only a couple of years ago, and they were trying to make sense of this whole process, and now are somewhat on the other side of this process. So we're happy to have them and grateful for their knowledge and their expertise that they will share with you today. But before we get to our questions and our introductions of our panelists, I wanted to provide a quick overview of our programs and our work with Berkeley Carroll families, both students and families. So I'm going to share screen just for a couple of minutes and go through a couple of things that I think will help you in envisioning what your next couple of years will look like in terms of college counseling. So give me a moment to figure out if I am sharing things correctly here. All of you. I thought it would be helpful. I know families, as you're starting to think about these next few years in the college process, so many families assume that we don't begin working with your students and you until maybe the 11th grade year. And there are many ways that we try and integrate our work with students and families into the 4 years, beginning with ninth grade and really giving insight and value and facts and information to families actually all throughout the 4 years. You can see from the slide that I've shown here that 11th grade is when we start working with families on a one-on-one basis. We typically do our assignments right after Thanksgiving, but there's so many things that we try and build into the schedule so that academics remain the central focus of what students are experiencing. But through programs like this with our coffees, we really try and help families become proficient in what the next steps will be and have a greater understanding of the trends and the information that's coming at you. I know from many different directions. I know when I look at for example, my Instagram feed, I get lots of references about college. So anything you do in that Google world, you probably are experiencing some of the same things. And we want to make sure that we give you the right information and that you are eased into this process as more of a developmental pathway rather than a jarring experience. We try and be real welcoming of questions, but we know that developmentally there's things that families and students are ready for at certain stages. So I will send along a copy of this to all of you and make sure that you are continuing to receive communications. Hopefully you're not too bored with seeing my name in your inbox because it will continue. You'll see a lot more information coming to you from the college office, but we thought just this visual might be helpful in starting to realize and recognize that you're in the beginning stages of this process and we'll help to guide you all along the way. So I'll stop my share here. Um, and what I want to do is just housekeeping, making sure that you have the opportunity to plug questions into our chat at any point in time. My colleagues, Joelle and Louis, Ms. Chen and Mr. Almonte, they're both going to guide us in their questions and what we've prepared, but we are happy to help you get your own questions answered and do any follow-up that's appropriate. So with that, I think I will turn it over and to my colleagues to allow them to introduce or have our parents introduce themselves and get us started with those questions. Thank you very much again for being here today. We really appreciate it, both the panelists and those of you that are in attendance.
Thank you. So thank you all for attending this morning. Again, my name is Joelle Chen. I'm one of the Associate Directors of College Counseling, and along with my colleague Louis, who I will allow to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Louis Almonte, and I'm also one of the associate directors of college counseling.
Great. And we will be moderating the panel. We have incredible parents of three incredible seniors who can share a little bit about their experience going through this process and also share some tidbits of advice. So, as Carolyn mentioned, there's a QA box. So, if you have any questions, please put those in the box. But we do have a couple of prepared questions for our panelists. But before we get to those questions, if we'll allow our panelists to introduce themselves, of just name, if you want to share some information about your student, but just to introduce yourself. And if we could start with Nadia.
Hi, good morning. My name is Nat Janinalich, and I am the parent of a graduating senior, Izzy Bermudez, who started at BC in 5th grade.
Thank you. And I guess we could go to Michael and then Emily.
Michael Corkery. Our daughter is Julia Corkery, who's a graduating senior. She started at BC in the 1st grade.
Thank you.
I'm Emily. Julia is also mine. And we also have a son in 9th grade.
Thank you both. So some insider knowledge here. And then Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Hartley Maneri. I am the parent of Jessamine Maneri, graduating senior. She started at Berkeley Carroll in 6th grade.
All right. So thank you all again. We will ask these questions to the panel in full. If we have any direct questions, we'll go to a specific person. But if you would like to answer the questions, you can use the hand raise function and we will call on you. So we're going to go back in time, potentially as early as 9th grade, but more likely 10th and 11th grade, to think about how you were starting this process. So my first question for the panel, when did your family start seriously thinking about college? And what were some of the first steps that you all took?
I'm happy to start with that one.
Perfect.
We did it pretty casually. Julia was in 10th grade and we were on vacation in California, and we integrated like a 2-hour stop at Pomona to check it out as we were driving through. And it was kind of casual, but it gave her a sense of what a college campus felt like, what it might feel like to be really far from home, what a small college was like, just to kind of get some initial reactions to the type of place that she might want to be at. And I think some people, some students might be able to sort colleges in different ways, like a big school or a small school, a city school or a rural school. But some may do it in other ways, like the best pottery program or the best architecture program. So like how kids sort and parents sort what they're looking for, I think depends on their particular circumstance.
Absolutely. Nadia. Oh, I think you're muted.
Gotcha.
There you go.
I think we had a little bit of a similar experience, although I think we started thinking seriously about college since she was born, just because my grandmother was a college professor. My parents were retired college professors, and before the job I have now, I was a college professor. So we have always gone to college and colleges. And as we visit places, we always go. We also visited colleges in New York just because the campuses are beautiful. So we would go have lunch, see what it felt like, and then took a tour. I think in a 10th grade, we went to New Haven and then took a tour of Yale. And that's sort of where it just started, like Emily said, to think about close to home, far away. What does it feel like? What does a city matter? Urban, rural campus, bigger campus, all of those things just started to come into play more so than before, where it was more of a tourist visit to campuses.
Chris?
I would just add, we started seriously a little bit later. I mean, college was on our mind, but in junior year, the first spring break, when we started to schedule those initial visits, she was working with the list. And quite frankly, they were really enjoyable. We were very open-minded. It was fun to make a schedule, and then we started to, educate ourselves and think about, What are we looking for? What are you looking for? What is our daughter looking for?
And just to add some context from what Chris was saying about the list, so all students will receive a preliminary college list in their junior spring. It's a list of around 30 schools. It is not the end all be all, but from initial conversations with the students and families of crafting a list of some schools that are, we think, really great for them to start deep diving in, researching, and learning a little bit more about. I'll pass it off to Lewis.
Sounds good. So as we're hearing from families, they're saying that they were able to visit some colleges, do some campus tours. So thinking, beyond an initial visit, were there any other ways that, meaningful ways that your student connected with colleges beyond a standard college information session and campus tour, whether this looked like a class visit, an overnight visit, connecting with a BC alum? Connecting with faculty or the department that they were interested in majoring in at any of these colleges. Was there anything that you did beyond a particular visit for some schools or a particular school? Nadia?
Yeah, I think for my daughter, it was really great to do research on obviously what she wanted to study and then connect with faculty and BC alum. And I think that last part was really important. Faculty, it was very easy to connect with people through the BC network. So whether it was people that the college office knew or other parents knew, if you said we're going to visit UPenn, someone would be like, "Oh, my good friend works at UPenn. Let me just get her, and she teaches so and so." And then that's sort of the way. And then my daughter relied on friends that had graduated the year before or a couple of years before, and met with them when we did tours. And I think that was instrumental in her just really loving some places or even not loving others, depending on the experience, but really more so learning more about places and being able to see it beyond the tour, just being able to hang out with people there.
Yeah, I would say also for Julia, meeting with BC alum, um, particularly at Bowdoin, where she is going next year, that was a very helpful thing, and it really helped her. That like, these tours after a while, as you visit these schools, they start to feel very similar.
Yes.
And because a lot of these schools are similar, just as the food, the classes, the class size, but spending some time with kids that actually go there really makes a difference. So I really encourage doing that. And they're so happy to meet. I mean, the BC network is very strong. So that was a really good thing.
Chris, yeah.
Jessamine took advantage of a lot of the webinars that colleges offered. The student panels were really helpful to get a feel for the school, to help her think, to ask questions, to think of additional questions, because certainly we couldn't visit all of the schools. So that played a really key role.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a really great point that Chris made is uh post COVID, right? A lot of the colleges really ramped up their virtual visit options. You can do an information session online. You can sometimes even get a guided tour online, or they'll have a video for a student to be able to watch. But like Chris was saying, they have really unique programs sometimes for student panels or an engineering panel or an arts panel. So it's a great way to gather more information beyond the general spiel that the school's going to give in their traditional information session. Emily?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in, not directly answering the question that was asked, but in addition to the online tours and webinars, there are two books that the college office recommended that we get, the Fisk Guide, and there's another one, I can't remember what it is, another really thick book. And those are incredibly helpful. And Michael mentioned that, like, in our experience, the tours kind of started blending together. And I found those books like almost as helpful as a tour sometimes. And certainly a lot easier to read like 3 pages in a book than, make a trip to Colorado.
Yeah, so every student is provided a FIS guide, and it's this really thorough book of over 300 or around 300 or so colleges, and giving about 2-page information. It also has a great resource that I like, which is if you like University of Denver, you might also like. So it's a great resource of connecting students of like, I don't know, I like this piece, but I don't know about these other colleges that might have those pieces as well. So you all were very thorough in talking about, cursory visits, more deliberate direct visits, connecting with students and alums there. Were there any other resources or tools that you all used to narrow down that list or really create the final list that your students applied to of colleges? I know you all were so thorough. You talked about all of the things we usually suggest, but if there was any other secret tip that you all had.
I think, oh, sorry.
No, please, Nadia, and then we'll go Emily.
I think as we did both virtual tours and college visits, my daughter had a list of, you guys provide this great resource of what to look for in a college visit. And so she had those questions and she could fill that and she could compare. And I think the final college list just sort of came from letting go probably of some schools that she thought she really wanted. And ultimately, after visiting or seeing the webinars, she felt she wasn't going to be happy there. It was more an idea of a place she wanted to go. And then being open to looking at other places that were also part of that list. And then sort of, blending those two. But I think it was pretty organic, the way that final list sort of came together. And we had a rating, but it was like really loose. It was like, I love it. I really love it. I like it. That was sort of like our rating. It's okay. And then we just went through that and moved things around. And ultimately, the college she ended up going to, which is Northwestern, was on the list that Mr. Almonte provided, but it wasn't really on our list. And it was a last minute visit that weekend in October, right before ED, when she thought she was EDing somewhere else. We went, she met with a BC alum who had just graduated, a good friend of hers. She loved it. It checked all her boxes. And then the list went out the window because that was the place she wanted to be at. And it turned out, that it worked out for her. So, yeah.
Thank you. Emily.
I was just going to say that I think that we have, like the parents have perceptions about some of these colleges from a long time ago. And some of these places have changed a lot. So I think we also have to approach the exercise with like an open mind and a recognition that like what you might have thought of a particular school may not actually be what it's all about today.
Absolutely. And Chris, I saw your hand as well.
I would just add, I mean, certainly research and program and visits, but come the fall of senior year, the cost really became very apparent. We wanted to be able to afford the school. We didn't want a lot of college debt. So, we reached out to Mr. Almonte, who has just shepherded us through this process with such an amazing guide to relook at the list and think about schools that offer more aid. And in fact, the school that she eventually chose, it checked all those boxes. I mean, she loved it. She loved the program, and we could also afford it.
Thank you. just to follow up, since we're on the conversation of list, we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and I just want to get to one real quick right now. Did you, as parents, add schools, or did your students add schools beyond the initial list that was provided? I see some nodding heads. Chris, do you want to start?
We did at a school that I wanted to go to, and we were very clear about it. My daughter did. She humored me. We went. It was a really good visit. It was interesting because the admissions person who presented was wonderful, and she did talk about there not being that one school out there, and I really appreciated that. It ended up falling away pretty quickly, but we did the visit, and it was a good contrast to other schools.
Absolutely. Did anyone else add any schools? No?
I don't think we added, I tried to just let her, the list is really comprehensive. It comes after a meeting with the counselors, just the student and the counselor. And then we have that family visit where the list is provided. I remember that when we went to that visit with Mr. Almonte, um, uh, he stepped out for a minute and my daughter was like, Mom, he wasn't taking notes when we met, but everything we talked about is there. Every school we talked about, everything I said is like on that list. And we were amazed that, he, and I'm sure the rest of you I know, was able to provide such a comprehensive list that really was tailored to her interests, the need for financial aid, where she wanted to be, what she wanted to study, be close, far away, open to California. Everything she had said was there. So we didn't add anything else.
I would say on this, the initial list, just us working with Julia, Emily, and I is kind of easy. But when you have to start adding safeties or middles, or I forget the exact term. I mean, the reaches are easy, but trying to create a balance list can be hard. And I think that's where Carolyn Middleton and the college counseling office can be very helpful, and because they just have more data at their fingertips, and they can just work with the student and kind of maybe take some of the emotion out of it, but that is inevitable when you're working with your parents. So they on that front, kind of balancing out the list, that the college counseling office is really helpful with that, was helpful with Julia.
Yeah, and just a quick tidbit in terms of our approach. We present each student with a very personalized college list that takes into consideration a lot of criteria, both that the student's considering and that the parents are considering, because it's a team effort and a joint effort. But we also encourage students to look beyond the list. We provided a list of 30 schools, 10 reaches, 10 middles, which are other places call them targets, and then 10 foundations, which other places call safeties. So it's a list of 30 schools, which is pretty comprehensive, but the reality is we could give the students so many more schools, but we try not to overwhelm them, and even 30 is a lot. But we always encourage students and families to look at any school that they might be interested in applying to, but it's always best to just have a conversation about that school to understand how selective it is, where it might land on the school, what category it might land on the students list, whether it's a reach, a middle, or a foundation, and to discuss important things about the schools, deadlines, things of that nature. So it's always good to just loop everybody into the conversation. So we got some questions in the chat, which is great. It seems like everybody is the gears are turning, which is great. Um, so did your student know their major when they wanted to apply to college? And if they were undecided, um, how did you go about helping them start to think in that direction? So that they were considering the right place for them, or a place that was going to help them figure out what it is that they wanted to major in. So the parents can answer that, and then the college counselors can also chime in with some advice that we give students as well. Nadia?
Um, my daughter thought she was going to study something different than what she's going to study. So she was very interested in environmental conservation and had worked really hard outside of school to get an internship with Brooklyn Bridge Park. She had done like a 1.5 year program doing a fellowship, an internship, TITES program. She had done things in summers. And it ended up being that as she did the visits and really thought about college seriously, that's not what she wanted to study. So there was a shift, and she was, or is pretty sure that she would like to go into med school. And so that was the last sort of last minute turn of the wheel that came together as we were visiting schools. Or as I think as you were crafting the list, really, like by that time, she knew that it was something different. So she did have an idea that she's going for neuroscience, and she did have an idea there. But I think it's okay to change your mind, even if it seemed like many of her activities were leading one place. She changed her mind, and I think that's fine.
I'll,
Chris?
I'll jump in that my daughter Jessamine doesn't know what she wants to major in. She's really interested in exploring creative writing, English as a major. Many of her extracurriculars for years have been arts based. So certainly that program is important. So she was clearly looking for a place where she could explore and combine things and get excited. So that was really our top priority.
And Julia,
Yep.
I think she has like a vague notion of what she wants to study, but I wouldn't say she's firmly decided, and that really guided her selection process of the list.
Yeah. And in terms of students, if they're undecided, they're still developing, especially if you have a ninth or a 10th grader. And what we really encourage is, our office kind of emphasizes to explore the curriculum of Berkeley Carroll. Berkeley Carroll is a pretty robust curriculum, both in the sciences and the humanities, world language, and STEM. And then also extracurricularly, right? To really try different things, try new things, to get a general sense of kind of the simple question is like, what do you enjoy? And like, uh, what do you like learning about? Because a lot of times that'll point a student in the right direction of what they might want to major in. And then what I would say is like that's why a lot of students, not all students, but I would say a good amount of students are attracted to the liberal arts colleges because the liberal arts colleges emphasize exploration. But even at large universities, typically the College of Arts and Sciences at a large university will allow a student to explore a liberal arts foundation or a lot of different majors and change their mind. Uh, Unless a student's applying to a mid to larger size school, it's incredibly rare that they will need to know their major. But if it's a large university, typically that's composed of colleges and schools that make up the university, a student will have to have a general idea of what their major is and what college and school they want to apply to at that university. But students usually will apply for what they're interested in at that time. And then once they get there, if they decide that they want to change, usually students have up until the end of their sophomore year in college to change their mind and change their major and still graduate within 4 years generally.
And a lot of students do. I was just catching up with a couple of Berkeley Carroll graduates from 2025. A good chunk of them are no colleges for, right? Is finding that place to explore. So to jump around a little bit, there are a couple of questions in the chat around standardized testing, everyone's favorite topic. So how and when did your student prepare for standardized testing like the SAT or ACT? And with so many schools being test optional, what role did testing actually play in your process? Did you decide to submit to some schools, not to others? So it's a little bit of a two-part question there.
So our
Yeah.
daughter went away the second semester of her junior year to the High Mountain Institute, to HMI, through Berkeley Carroll. And that, in a way, like complicated the timing of things a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't mean that like to say one shouldn't do that. That's a great program, a different webinar. Happy to talk about it. She loved it. But I actually regret a little bit how early we started the test prep process. And because she was going away, we started it before she went. So just before the start of her junior year. And I think it just dragged it out for so long. And if we were to do it again, we might do less before she went and just deal with it afterwards.
That's a great point. And everyone who has done one of those semester away programs speaks so highly about it. So for 10th graders, you've probably heard already. For ninth graders, you will start learning about those amazing programs, but it can impact that testing piece. So it's definitely worth a conversation for us to have if you are considering those programs.
And I think my
Please.
my daughter wanted to go to the island school for a semester for that spring semester and ended up deciding to do a summer program there instead because of the complications of maybe not so much testing, but the complications of SRD and some other classes that she was taking that I know Julia does as well. But it just seemed like complicated. So she did them over the summer and then took that time to prepare for the ACT. Even though many of the schools she was applying to were test optional, she wanted to take the test. It's not like she enjoyed the tutoring and the test taking, but it's something she wanted to do. She, you know how Berkeley Carroll provides that initial test, and then she got that score and she thought she could do better. So she wanted, it was a personal thing. And she ended up submitting to all schools, even the ones that were test optional, because she felt proud of the accomplishment. But I think certainly that initial test that BC provides and sort of the help of guiding through when to take it, how to prepare for it was really crucial.
Yeah. And for context, Berkeley Carroll will offer a practice ACT and a practice SAT digitally in the spring of your sophomore year so that you could get a sense of which test works best for you. The SAT and ACT are very different. So I think Julia did the SAT and Izzy did the ACT. So every student, it's going to be a different fit. So that's really what we want to give students the opportunity to see the two different exams, figure out what works best for them, whether they decide to actually submit it to colleges. That's a process that they'll talk with their college counselor. But we think it's helpful to have that test score, an official test score available to them to have the choice to decide, do I want to submit it? Is it going to add to my application? Or are other pieces of my application really going to stand out?
Definitely. Um, we have a question here that might apply to you, Chris. So, a parent is asking if you had a performing arts student, how did you incorporate BFA and conservatory programs with auditions?
Okay, great question. My daughter spent most of her life immersed in dance, most recently at Berkeley Carroll, songwriting and performing. Um, she did do one audition, and she decided to do it in December of her senior year. And we talked about it last night. Um, Her music teacher had, in her junior year, suggested, like, think about auditioning, applying to schools. And she didn't feel like she could do it. She didn't think she was good enough. So I'm so grateful that her teacher revisited that with her because she had songs ready to go. So she auditioned for Berklee School of Music, um, got everything together. Her advice would be to really, start earlier, certainly, and be really careful looking through everything to make sure you have all the information. And she was accepted, and it was tremendous for her confidence, and for her identity as a musician. And it was one of the top choices at the end. So it's a really great process for her.
Definitely. And for context, Jessamyn's list was mostly liberal arts colleges, decided to add an art school. But if your student is thinking of maybe some art schools or BFA programs, you don't have to apply to just art schools or BFA programs. You can mix them into your list. Or you can just apply solely to BFA programs and arts programs. How that differs in terms of an application review process, a traditional general admissions application review process is going to look holistically or contextually. You'll hear that word a lot. They'll look at the transcript, the grades, testing if it's submitted and either optional or required. They'll look at the students' essay recommendations, their extracurricular activities list. So they look at every single piece of the pie. The part of the pie that holds the most weight, but they'll still look at everything, but that has the most weight is the transcript in a general application review. But for a arts program, typically what has the most weight is the audition or the portfolio. So if you have an artist, what I would say is most students will need a art portfolio of about 12 to 15 pieces. I would say on average, what they would need in their art portfolio. And most students should have all of that ready to go, I would say, by October 1st of senior year. Um, if it's for theater or if it's for art or for music, there's typically an audition. You might have to do some monologues. Sometimes there's an interview process. So it's better to have an idea of if you're applying for a BFA program or an arts program a little earlier on because there's some screening or some portfolio information that has to be submitted prior to the application.
Great. So you all have chatted about this a little bit, but I would love to hear more in depth. How did you work with your Berkeley Carroll counselor in this process? Kind of what was that relationship and what was the role that your counselor took on for you all? Yeah, Nadia.
We were obsessed with our college counselor, still
We
are.
didn't pay them to say this, I promise.
Um, w- it was just such a great relationship. I think it was a little bit of everything. He's the person that, had so much knowledge, but also was so open to both what my daughter wanted and what our family needed. There was so much thought put behind it. There was also, support, not pressure. There were certainly deadlines, but there was always the idea that you should enjoy this, and this should be somewhat joyful, even if there are times when it doesn't really feel like it. Because at the end, there's something wonderful, whether it's a first choice, a second choice, something you didn't see coming. But I think it was just such an important relationship for both my daughter and myself, but especially for her. I think she felt his office was a place she could always go to. She could email anytime. There were some meetings that it was like she had, school and then sports and then Key Society. And then it was like 7 p.m. and he had time to meet with her at 7 p.m., which I don't know how he does, and probably shouldn't, but because he deserves time off. So you all do. But it was such an incredible relationship of support and guidance and respect for her as well. So it wasn't just like, oh, this is what you should look at. It was really like about listening and guiding, taking some of the stress down. I think I thought it was going to be good because you see it with all the webinars and meetings that you all do at Sterling. Um, but it like surpassed any of what I thought would be. And we are incredibly grateful to him and to all of you, really.
Thank you. It's very kind.
Thank you so much. I'm like blushing right now.
Well, kind of a two-part question because I see we have a couple of questions about this in the chat. Did any of you or your family use like an essay or a college consultant, external essay coach or a college consultant? And how was that collaboration and experience through the process? Yes, Chris.
I'll start off. We did not. In fact, I did not read my daughter's essays until after. I like to put that out there because she was in such good hands and I wanted it to be hers. And I know from experience when I do give feedback when about schoolwork, it gets heated and I wanted to remove that from the process. So there's an incredible amount of trust. I'm so proud of her. She wrote a lot. And I had no concerns about deadlines or motivation. She was in it. Um,
I would
Nadia.
just, may,
Oh,
maybe
Mike.
a broader comment on the essay process. Uh, when you're applying early, that sort of Julia working through the essays and really putting her her story out and really being thoughtful and that felt I want to say fun, but it was one school, spent a lot of time on it. When she didn't get in early to Bowdoin, which is where she applied early, then it became okay. Now she had to do essays for 15 schools, and that was like churning it out, and that was a very different and a much more stressful process. And again, to echo what Nadia is saying, like Carolyn Middleton was really great on that and just a calm, steadying presence. And just again, even when we were just cranking to get those out, by the deadline, the end of the year, and then into January. Carolyn's always respectful of making sure that it was Julia's voice and not overcorrecting, not trying to micro edit, and just you know just being helpful and supportive. So yeah, that the essay, it's not an easy, it's very, very hard. But again, college counseling office was really, really great.
Yeah,
Nadia.
I also did not read my daughter's college essay until after. Again, I trusted her completely to write whatever she wanted to write. It's her, life, her school, her choosing. But I also trusted Mr. Almonte to guide her through the process. We didn't work with anyone externally, and she was very clear that she didn't want that. She had friends that were doing that. She thought it would just add stress, and she wanted to just keep the relationship she had with her college counselor and trusted that that would be more than enough. She was afraid of multiple voices in that essay. So she just wanted the one person that knew her and her list and her interests sort of like through the whole process. And it wasn't an easy one. She had a really hard time. It's easy for her to write. It was hard for her to write the essay. She had one done. She wasn't happy. And last minute, she spoke to Mr. Monte and said she wanted to change that. And he was supportive. That second essay was very easy to write. And that's the one she submitted because it was really what she wanted to write about. So it wasn't a linear process, but I think there was less pressure because she was just working with the one person that she really trusted to guide her through this.
Yeah. And I want to make a comment on that because there are times our office always wants to make sure that a student's submitting something that they're confident in, right? So it's like a couple days before, and then we had this essay, but Izzy didn't feel confident in it, and I was like, okay, let's throw it out, right? Let's. I think you can write something in the amount of time that we have. I can help you get it to a place where we feel confident in what you can submit. Um, but what we don't want to happen is, there's one person on one end being like, no, submit this essay, you don't have time, and somebody else on the other side kind of doing what I was doing, or vice versa. Because it can create a lot of stress for the students. And there's some really great college consultants out there. There are also some really bad ones, some really, really bad ones that have a lot of misinformation, and the information that they're giving or that we're giving sometimes can clash. There are some consultants who have worked in college admissions and some who have never worked in college admissions. So, yeah, I think it just depends on the family and it really depends on what you feel like your family can handle. But my biggest piece of advice would be like to vet the person and make sure that they're in collaboration with BC's college office because it'll make the process smoother for you and your family. In terms of uh, oh, sorry. Somebody in the chat wants to know all the schools that your students are going to. So if you could just go around and just say that quickly.
Oberlin.
Bowdoin.
And Northwestern University.
Perfect. So here's a really good question. So, you know, senior year is a lot. Students are taking a full course load. They're doing their extracurricular activities. They're trying to maintain a social life. They are also doing the college process, which we tell students it's like a half credit class in the fall. And then it's a lot of conversations that have to happen around the college process. Is your student getting stuff done? The college list, where they're going to apply to. So, how did somebody wants to know how did you keep your relationship with your child intact throughout senior year? What was your relationship like with your student? What worked? What didn't? What did you learn about yourself and your student throughout this process?
Michael may not be willing to say this, so I'm going to out him here. He's a writer, and he did work with Julia on her essays and gave her feedback throughout. And I actually think that was a really special thing in their relationship. And her essay was extremely personal, and it was painful at times, right? Like it's a ton of work. You called it half credit class. I would
Cool.
dispute that. It's a huge amount of work. But I did not see the essay for a long, long time. But Michael and Julia, I think really bonded over it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. I mean, everybody's college, how things will work out will be different, but yeah, there's a lot of ups and downs, and you get to really, um, for better or worse, you get to really know your college, your high school senior in a way that they've a lot of other experiences you might not because yeah, you got to support them and help them through. However, whether it's practically helping them or just telling them it's going to be okay, and it is, um, we have, just be honest. It's stressful. I think we'd all agree. It is a really stressful process. Like we can, there's BC's got great support, um, but it is, there's a lot of pressure these kids put on themselves. There's a lot of pressure that kids put on each other. Um, you know, yes, there's a practical time to start thinking about college, but there's also just the reality. Kids today think about college and know about colleges really, really early. So this starts early. So yeah, just it, in terms of you just you find ways to support your kids and you grow closer. At least we did. So yeah.
It's great to hear. Well, Michael, you talked about kind of some of the social dynamics as well. And we have a question in the chat around, what were the social dynamics for your students with friends applying to maybe similar places or different places? How did they navigate that and how did they end up supporting each other? Yeah, Nadia.
Yeah, I can speak about it in like sort of her perspective from what she has told me and a little bit of what I saw. So, my daughter mentioned that they were a very supportive class. Um, this is what I've heard from her, that in maybe other years people were more guarded in terms of where they were applying, and that's okay too. I think, the college office does say you don't need to tell anyone where you're applying. I think from what she says, this class they were pretty open on where they were applying, and I think pretty supportive. If you look at the places where a lot of them are going, there are some repeats, of course, but people are going to many different places as well. So I think they were conscious that there's a lot of space for everyone, and the fact that someone else is applying to the same school might be a little hard, but it doesn't really mean anything. Both of you can get in, one of you can get in, neither of you can get in. It's so I think I think they were, from what I've heard, pretty supportive and really celebrated when people have gotten in and helped them through when they haven't and have been waiting. Um, so I don't know. I think that's sort of what I heard.
Thank you. Emily? And
Oh,
then
I
Chris?
was going to mention the like early decision versus regular decision dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Michael explained that Julia applied early to Bowdoin, where she's going, and she was deferred, and it was devastating. Like I think Brooklyn shook when she did not get in. She was so upset. It was really rough. So, that's a moment when I don't know, half-ish, maybe not quite half of students get in early, and then the other half have to go through the rest of this application process, which is grueling. And if there's like any advice I would give, it's like assume that you're going to be in this for the long haul, and have everything in motion as if you are going to be doing it for the long haul.
Great
Absolutely.
But that was really hard. It was really painful, to not get what you really wanted and have a ton of work in a very compressed period of time.
Yeah. And just to kind of clarify, just in case some people aren't familiar with terminology. So early decision is a round that students can apply to for admissions, and it's them basically saying, "You're my top school. Me, my parent, and my counselor have signed a contract that says that if you admit me, I have to go." And that's an earlier deadline. It's typically November 1st and 15th, and then students find out by mid-December if they were admitted or not. The benefit of that is that it's like very enticing for colleges to want to admit students, so it can give students a big boost, and make it more likely for admission. Sometimes a little bit more likely, sometimes a lot bit more likely, depending on the school. So I would say a lot of our students, not all of them, will apply ED somewhere, which is a bit of the culture of the school, but not something that we push or promote, but something that we factually will just say like this could help you. So that's kind of what ED is. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to echo what Emily said. It's grueling going through the whole year. We had intentionally decided that we would go through the whole year. And friends were incredibly supportive. However, social media, the world, it's a lot. So my daughter kept some things close and private because there were so many unknowns, quite frankly. Though I will say, visiting a handful of schools that she was accepted to was amazing. They wanted her. We visited 5 schools at the end, and it was well worth it. And still the year was stressful. So we just did our best to try to support and listen and manage a lot of big feelings.
Absolutely. And then Nadia?
And think about what Emily said. Izzy did apply to Northwestern ED and she did get in, but she wasn't able to fully celebrate because a lot of schools when they accept you, at least in our experience, they accept you and give you the financial aid package at the same time. That wasn't the case for her with Northwestern. She was accepted, and we still had to wait 2 days before the deadline to get our financial aid package. By that time, she had already been accepted to other places that had given her the whole package, because you have to withdraw your applications once you get accepted ED, but she couldn't because she didn't have the full package. So even like Emily said, or like Christine said, even if you do get accepted, sometimes you can't fully celebrate and you can't just pull out from the whole. She still had to go through the whole application of other schools. So we were in it even with ED for the long haul, and it wasn't easy because it wasn't a full celebration. It turned out, it worked out for her, but it's never like 100% clear what it's going to be.
There are a lot of big feelings that come from this college process. Good feelings, but also sometimes complicated ones. But we have seen firsthand how the students, the community, how our office like really supports them in all of the good times and the less good times, some of the stressful ones as well. But I'll
Yeah.
pass it off to Lewis to do our last question.
Yeah, before we move to that, what I'd say is there's always a mix of emotions around every round. Like
Yeah.
during ED, some students get admitted, some students get deferred, some students get denied. So, it can be a very delicate kind of matter when figuring out how to celebrate yourself, but also support the people around you. But I think our students do a pretty good job of being mindful of that, and we try to communicate that, hey, there's all these feelings in the space. Let's try our best to be mindful, celebrate yourself, but also be mindful and support the people around you as well. So, to be mindful of everyone's time, our final question, since you are all seasoned parents and guardians that have gone through the college process and you have your child or your first child or second child going to college, what is your biggest piece of advice that you would impart to our ninth and 10th grade parents and guardians who are getting ready to start the process? Chris?
For us, keeping an open mind, and being aware, don't let superficial judgments eliminate possibilities before you can investigate them. There are so many amazing schools out there, real gems waiting for you to discover them. So that's what I would say.
Nadia?
I think just know how your student works and then find ways to support that. My daughter puts enough pressure on herself. She doesn't need me to put pressure on her. I sometimes did, and it wasn't great. So try to be mindful of that. And then also to trust the college office and the process and try to find a little bit of joy, maybe in some of those visits, do things that were fun as well to see the cities, and just try to know that it'll last a certain period of time and it will be over. So maybe finding a little bit of joy whenever possible, whether it's like buying merch or I don't know, anything that can help.
I would say the biggest thing is to trust and lean on the college counseling office. At the beginning, if you run into roadblocks, if there's a challenge, we find it enormously helpful, both practically, but also just, you know, when you run into a challenge. I mean, Carolyn was always available. You could always get on our calendar for one question, for 10 questions. And so it's really it's there. It's a great resource. And it's if it turns out being a long process, they they're a godsend. So yeah, that was the biggest thing for us.
I was going to say the same thing. So we have a really, within Berkeley Carroll, we're really lucky to have this support and use it.
And on our end, we're really lucky to have parents like you. So the collaboration goes both ways. We're so, so appreciative of you all taking time in your morning to share your seasoned advice with our 9th and 10th grade families. And thank you to the families and guardians for attending and asking really awesome questions as well. So we will send out this recording to everyone probably within the next couple of days. But thank you all so much for attending. Have a great one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Bye.